death rate was 0.06. This is the percentage of people who are dying from the measles. So because we have such an immune compromised, society now.
Welcome to the Crunchy Moms Unfiltered, the podcast where we question everything and say the things no one else will. I'm April Locani, a serial entrepreneur turned naturopathic practitioner and just a truth-seeking mama.
And I'm Brandy Lemire, a social media influencer, a certified nutrition response practitioner, and just a crunchy mom who's done with censorship and refuses to co-parent with the government. April and I built this podcast as a safe space for moms and dads to have real, raw, uncensored conversations.
From what's really in our food to the truth about modern medicine, we're diving deep into the topics no one else wants to touch. Because an informed mom makes empowered choices.
No filters, no fear, just real, raw talk. Welcome to Crunchy Moms Unfiltered. Crunchy Moms Unfiltered, this is our podcast where we are going to talk about all the things uncensored. Things you can't talk about on social media, things that you get banned for and put in, Facebook jail. We are here to talk about them all. And today's topic is a really hot one right now. So we are going to be talking all things measles today with one of our favorite practitioners, Lakrista Odell. She's an RN and holistic practitioner. And we are going to break down the fear and the propaganda surrounding the measles. So I think we're going to start today with a little clip that's been going around on social media and just showing how powerful the media truly is when it comes to the way we view anything really, and how much propaganda truly affects the way moms look at things with their children, the way our buying practices, like literally everything in our life, the media controls. So April, if we want to show that clip real quick.
Absolutely. 1 second, I'll pull it up. Hang on. Got to share my screen. All right. Can we see it, everyone?
It's thinking. Yes.
All right. Here we are.
Here. What are you doing home from school?
They sent me home. Measles.
It's either measles or a strange case of red freckles.
You have got a temperature.
They told me 101.1. What's the record?
Never mind.
Oh, are you sure it's the measles?
Well, he certainly got all the symptoms. A slight temperature, a lot of dots, and a great big smile.
A great big smile.
No school for a few days.
Say hello to my dotted son for me. Tell him I'll bring him some comic books and I'll see you later, dear.
Okay, honey, bye.
Boy, this is the life, isn't it? Yeah. If you have to get sick, sure can't beat the measles. That's right. No medicine.
Inside or out? Like shots, I mean.
Don't even mention shots. Yeah.
Measles, measles, measles. Well, all the kids have now had the measles.
So have I.
Well, I had them years ago. Looks like the Bradys are finished with the measles.
Hold it. You're not through yet.
Alice, don't tell me you're coming down with the measles.
Oh, I hope so. I'd hate to think I was just learning how to blush at my age.
I'm fine. Dad says I should go to school.
7 students confirmed with measles, 4 others possible.
How? They had to have been vaccinated.
These moms never vaccinated their kids and lied about it. Vaccines are harmful.
You are endangering the health of every child in this city.
Liz, no, it's turning blue.
Call 911.
Only SPU.
Here. What are you doing home from school?
Right,
They sent me home.
Isn't that crazy?
Insane.
Oh
Insane.
my gosh, it makes my blood boil to watch those two. So I guess let's jump into, I believe that, and I should have looked this up first, but I believe the vaccine for the measles came out in 1963.
Yes.
And so that was 1969. So that's when really hardly anyone was vaccinated against the measles. The vaccine was very new. And so then the other one, the Law and Order SUV, was in the 2000s. I think like the 2010, 2015
right around like
or something. Yeah. Okay. And look at the difference. Like measles was like, oh, we all have it. We get to stay home from school. We're happy. And then it's like, oh my gosh, these crazy unvaccinated, like these anti-vax moms.
Like
So
the
Lakrista,
betrayal is so foul. Like the betrayal is so foul.
It's insane.
the crazy thing is, in 1961, so pre-vaccine, the death rate was 0.06. And I actually think there are sources that say it's even less than that. So this is the percentage of people who are dying from the measles. So because we have such an immune compromised, society now,
right,
because of the vaccinations, our death rate's actually higher. So that's proof that unvaccinated people can fight this off and fare so much better with the measles than vaccinated people. So people are like, should I get the vaccine? No, it's showing that the death rate is higher in vaccinated kids than it is in unvaccinated kids. And so the whole thing with people blaming, anti-vaxxers for bringing the measles back, it's like, it's really funny that the vaccinated people are the ones that are coming down with it, So, and actually the MMR, like the combo vaccine, that came out in 1971. And then everything, as we know, went downhill with the MMR. But, like I said, pre-vaccine, there was really no reason for this vaccination. The death rate was so low. Like, why did we do this anyways,
Well, and it was such a common childhood illness. Like, and it's crazy because the death rate is so low, but they create so much fear. And then you and I did a talk a while back on like tetanus, and that's we'll have you back to do that. But even that, the death rate is so low, but they don't tell you this, and they create all this fear surrounding this. And it's scary to be a parent as it is. It is tough to navigate this thing called motherhood. And so we do what we think we're supposed to. And that's, you're supposed to vaccinate your kids. Your doctor says it's okay. You're supposed to do this. And then it's scary to start questioning that. And then there's all this fear and propaganda. And so I'm going to let you get into the facts. One thing I want to point out, though, is, they're now talking about this measles, this patient who died. They died from the measles. But if you really look at the headlines, they're saying tested positive for measles. They are testing people after they die who were already in the hospital with other things, and then saying that the death is from that. It's just
which is simply similar to what happened with COVID.
COVID, yes.
It's exactly what happened with COVID. Is you find out that they had all these issues, and they tell you that they died with COVID, which maybe in fact they did get a positive test result, but that wasn't why they were there.
Yeah, and I'll touch on tetanus just for a second. I know that's not what this talk is about, but I just dealt with this Wednesday of this week. My son's flying. I'm actually videoing him. I turned the camera off right as he wrecked his bike. He's hauling down this hill, spinning his pedals, and he looks back. And when he does, he pulls his handles and he goes over the handlebars. And as soon as I pick him up, he starts screaming, "I need a doctor," which he doesn't ever go to the doctor. So I'm like, I don't even know why he said that. But his knee was like laid open. And so I'm like, we need some staples. You know what I mean? Like, this is not going to go back together well. So we load him up. And I'm taking him in for staples. I feel like this is the last time we were there. My daughter got staples in her head too. And so I go in, and essentially the nurse practitioner said, we were asked 4 times before we got in a room about a tetanus shot. And then finally I said, a tetanus shot takes 2 to 3 weeks to kick in. If he does have tetanus, he's going to have it in 3 to 7 days. And so that's not going to be effective. So I'm not going to him
right
now. And so the lady comes.
They don't tell you that.
No,
they do not tell you that.
If he starts to show signs of tetanus, it's too late by that point. And I said, it's too late by this point. Like, this is already too late. That's not going to help unless you have the immune globulin here that you can give, and you don't. So, and I'm not concerned. So she essentially said because he didn't have a tetanus shot, she wasn't going to close him up. So we were actually denied care. His knee was left open. They did clean it and they put steri strips on it, but she did not close him up because he was not vaccinated. And that is the first time that my child has been denied care, which is fine. His knee healed up. It looks great. I just took the steri strips. Oh, they fell off. They gave me, I said, well, I guess we just showed up for antibiotics and a vaccine because that's all we were offered, which we didn't give him the antibiotics. She even said, it's not infected, but it could be. It could become infected. And I was like, well, why don't we do some preventative things to prevent it instead of just take an antibiotic and wreck his entire gut microbiome for an injury to the knee? Let's just treat the knee. So we did an oral natural antibiotic and of course put some silver on it, and he's perfectly fine. But that's the first time I think that we've actually been denied treatment. So that was
That's
crazy.
wild.
That's crazy.
I have a friend whose child they thought had strep. Again, and this, you know what? You just gave me like 3 other talks we're going to have you back for in here. Because you can't talk about this on social media or you get censored. But I have a friend who, like you said, we don't go to the doctor. Like, and even when I tell Anya you have to go to the doctor, it makes it worse because she's like, thinks it's a really big deal because we don't go.
Right.
And so I have a friend who's
staples and broken
right? She thought she had strep and she went to the doctor and the culture was negative. And the doctor sent her home with an antibiotic and was like, well, let's just do it anyways. And we'll, and see what happens. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no. Like
that happens all the time.
Why?
That happens every time we go for something. They'll give it to me. Same with the steroid. My son has Stridor really bad. He's had Stridor 5 times. Now, granted, we found mold in my house and we're getting to the root of that, right? However, when he's not breathing, like he can't breathe, a steroid might be extremely necessary. But I've gone before where I'm like, I don't want it to get to that place. What can I do? And they'll send me home with a steroid and tell me to give it to him orally. It'll be the 5th or 6th time he had it in 6 months. So I'm like, no, I can't, it's knocking his immune system down every time, but they keep telling me it's okay to do. And the more I research, I'm like, it's not. Crazy.
It's wild. So we could talk about this all day and we will do more talks on each of these deeper things. And I feel like the 3 of us could sit here and share stories all day, but measles. Measles are all the rage right now.
Yes. Let's get to the details. So what was the death rate before vaccines, like you said earlier, compared to now? So what's the death rate now?
The death rate now is 0.33%. So it's still less than 1, but we were talking 0.06. So
you said that earlier, but I didn't hear the percentage for now. Okay. Wow.
And that's, of course, different sources are going to tell you different things, but essentially the correlation between the two is it is higher now than it was pre-vaccine. So that makes me confident that my kids they're fine. You know what I mean?
It gives you the confidence knowing you're doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm. So and it's these death rates are in kids that are chronically ill already, and we have so many chronically ill kids because they're fully vaccinated. Like the book Vax versus Unvax, Let the Science Speak, was written by Dr. Brian Hooker and co-wrote with Robert Kennedy, and they show the CDC actually, I know y'all know who Del Bigtree is. A lot of people might not, but he's all about vaccine truth. And he actually wrote the foreword for that book. But he sat down with Fauci and was like, why won't you do this study? Vaccinated kids versus unvaccinated. And he said his first response was, it's unethical because we can't encourage people not to vaccinate. And he said, no, you don't have to. We have a database for you of people who have chosen. Compare that to what you've got and let's see. Who's healthier? And he said that Fauci looked at him and said, I will never do that study. Wow. We will never do that study because they know what the outcome will be. And in that book, they go over it's either 100 or more studies that have been done, of course, outside the CDC because the CDC won't do them, comparing vax and unvax kids. And the stuff in there is insane. Like the chronic illness is so high. And what parents don't think is 27 times more likely to get an ear infection, 27 times more likely.
Crazy.
Like my kids, my 2 youngest that have never had a vaccine are 6 and 7. They have never had an antibiotic. They have never had a steroid ever. And
that's
I'm like,
Anya.
And people look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, their immune system works.
Yes. I have an almost 9-year-old who has never been on an antibiotic. She's never had a steroid. Literally the only time she's even really gone to the doctor was because she broke her arm.
Yeah. And
I'm on the other end of it. So my child's both,
they've never had Tylenol or Motrin or anything like that. And people look at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, what would I give them Tylenol or ibuprofen for? Like if they had a broken bone or something and they were in pain. Okay. But for a fever, we don't treat fevers. People are like, at what point do you treat it? For me, because I'm comfortable with it? Never. I do homeopathy to keep it manageable, but I'm not going to give them Tylenol for a fever. They're like, do you concerned about febrile seizures? No, because febrile seizures do not cause long-term brain damage. And I feel like with kids, they either have those or they don't. Some kids are likely to have them, some are not. My kids don't have those. If your kid does, you need to look into calcium lactate, which I talk about that a lot. The body heats up to pull calcium to activate the white blood cells. Some kids, it does pull calcium from the brain, and it can cause febrile seizures. So dosing them with calcium lactate through the winter and really high doses when they get a fever. There's so many things that we can do, but the problem with why our death rate is higher, in my opinion, is that these kids have so many chronic illnesses. Look at the obesity rate. I do not remember kids being so overweight when I was in school. Kids are diabetic. Like we've got kids like the asthma, the allergies, like the autoimmune disorders, kids with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. Like it is wild to me. And they'll say, you know, I know we're talking about measles, but the autism rate used to be like 1 in 10,000, and now it's 1 in 36. And the CDC will say, oh, we're just better at diagnosing. Bullshit. Because kids were not in my school.
Right.
Totally.
If there were kids banging their heads on the wall and wetting their pants and screaming because they're nonverbal, like I would have remembered. And now they have whole classrooms for these kids.
Yeah. No, you're right.
That's a whole nother topic. Again, and we want to deep dive into all of these. Like, oh my gosh, there's so many things. I think that we should talk about, I know you have some points you want to hit. I think we should talk about a couple things. One, it's when they tell you, like, when they do the fear mongering and the propaganda around the measles.
Right.
And they're pushing to get vaccinated. Most parents don't fully, I didn't. I have 2 teenagers who were fully vaccinated until my youngest had a reaction. I didn't realize that there was combo vaccines and you were being vaccinated against multiple things. I didn't know to question that, so I didn't know about it. So like the measles vaccine, you're not going in and just getting vaccinated for the measles. It's a combo vaccine. I'd like for you to touch on that a little bit. Yeah. And it's also one of the ones that we're having a high adverse reaction to. And that's where that cutoff is, where, the signs of, you talking about autism, the signs of autism tend to present themselves around 12 to 18 months. Well, it's very interesting that 12 to 18 months is when we're taking our kids in for the MMR.
So like I said, with the tetanus, they wouldn't have given him just a tetanus shot. They would have given him the DTaP. And next to the MMR, so parents are coming out saying after the MMR, that's my kid 24 hours later was a totally different child. They're saying this about the MMR. The second most common vaccine is the DTaP because it's these combos. Okay. So MMR is the most prevalent. I always say, if you're going to avoid one, skip the MMR. If you're going to avoid 2, skip the DTaP, because those are the 2 most dangerous in my opinion. So you have the documentary Vaxxed, From Cover Up to Catastrophe is what it's called. So Dr. William Thompson and Andrew Wakefield are in this documentary. So William Thompson was a whistleblower for the CDC, and he has proof showing they covered up the study. So I said they haven't done a study. They have, but they just
don't release it. Yeah.
And so William Thompson comes forward with this information, and he talks about it in that. So highly recommend that documentary. But Andrew Wakefield was actually
real quick. Lakrista, we have that documentary linked in our community. Yeah. We have Vax 1 and 2. 3, I don't think is available to link yet, but we do have those where you can watch them.
We do. We have them all under our research tab in our community. It's got so many amazing things for all this information you're talking about right now.
Awesome. So Andrew,
we can link them below too. We can link them in the show notes, guys. If anyone is like wanting these resources, we can link those in the show notes.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. So Wakefield was a GI doctor. So he wasn't like a neurologist or somebody that worked with kids with autism, but it's been a while since I watched the documentary, but kind of Cliff Notes version from what I remember is like he had a mom that was calling him, or maybe there were several, and he was like, listen, like I don't deal with neurological stuff. Like I'm a GI doctor. And they were like, no, you don't understand. Like we know these kids have, autism or whatever neurologically wrong with them. I don't know if they'd actually been diagnosed. So they were just saying developmentally delayed. But they were like, it all started after this vaccine and they're having massive GI issues. So we know the gut's the second brain. So it lets 80% of your serotonin and tons of neurotransmitters and stuff are produced in the gut. And he's like, okay, so he starts looking at this. And I think there were like maybe 12 kids that he did a study on that had all these GI issues and they were developmentally delayed. And all those parents were claiming it happened right after the MMR vaccine. He publishes this paper for the Lancet. And He never said, do not get vaccinated. This is what is wild to me. He never said, stop vaccinating. He said it has been shown that there's higher instance of these diseases with the combo vaccine, MMR. He was recommending the single measles, the single mumps, the single rubella, single vaccinations versus the combo. And they came to him and said, they pulled the single vaccines right when this came out. They pulled them off the market. So they were no longer an option. And they said, we have too much money in this campaign, in this, they didn't call it campaign, like this program, the MMR program. We're not pulling this off the shelf. So they revoked the paper. They revoked his license. He actually left the UK. He's here in the US working with RFK now, alive and well, doing all the good. So it's just, that is what happens when people speak out. He did not even say stop vaccinating. He said we need to go back to the single vaccines. They do not care about the health of your children. They care about money. They had too much money in this combo vaccine to pull it. And so they had to move forward with it. And it is literally sick that these kids are dying. Like the highest rate of SIDS is following vaccinations. So,
it even says it on inserts. Vaccine inserts say SIDS.
But you don't even get it. I feel like they should present you the insert when they vaccinate you without having to ask for that. Like anytime you, like they tell you, oh, you should look into this, they hand you an insert. So why aren't they handing you an insert before they vaccinate? Here's what we vaccinated you on. Here's the inserts for it. This is where you can get the information about it. Like, why wouldn't that be a standard?
And a scary thing that people are, what's happening now is people that maybe didn't vaccinate are going in and getting an MMR because they're scared. And they can actually, you know, the first dose typically is between 12 and 15 months old. And then the second dose they recommend like around between ages 4 and 6. But you can take a kid in, say they're 2 or 3, and you can get that vaccine. And then say, or I don't know if they can do the second one before, but say you have a 5-year-old that's never been vaccinated. They'll give them an MMR, and then 28 days later, they'll give them the second MMR. They'll give them, as long as they're 28 days apart, you need to get them up to date. You've got to get them up to date. So they'll give them both. Those are live vaccines, and a side effect of the vaccine is the measles itself. So let's talk
about that.
Yes.
Will you go into that, the wild measles versus the vaccine-induced measles?
I mean, essentially, just like with, I always talk about homeopathy. So homeopathy is like a frequency of like an herb or something, but then they have another homeopathic called a no-so that's a frequency of like a diseased tissue, so that you can like take that to help and it stimulate your body to produce antibodies for that specific thing. So that's kind of the same concept with the vaccination, except they have like adjuvants and stuff in there that have like thimerosal, and even the ones that don't have thimerosal have formaldehyde and all this stuff in it. And so what happens with an adjuvant is anything that's attached to that, it causes your body to build an antibody to that. So that's why all these kids have peanut allergies and egg allergies, and why we're also like glyphosate. So people are having like gluten sensitivities, which gluten's a whole other thing, but a lot of it's glyphosate sensitivity. All the wheat's sprayed and there's glyphosate in these vaccines.
Robert Kennedy talks a lot about that.
Yeah. And so you're going to be sensitive to anything that's in that vaccine. So that's where all these peanut allergies and all this stuff are coming from, because there's little bits of those in, you know, the vaccine itself, but it's a live vaccine. So they're actually giving you the little bit of the virus, which we know in homeopathy, that's great, but you can actually give a frequency of it without having to give the actual live vaccine. And we'll talk about that at the end, kind of, you know, what we recommend to help boost. But that the side effect of that is not only measles, but there's a worse condition. And I'm trying to think of what it's called. Is it Stevens-Johnson syndrome? Candace Owens talks about it in that clip that she released. Typically, you have to pay for her documentary that's shot in the dark, but she released the MMR, the measles section, for free because of all this that's going on. And she talks about it's actually a worse skin condition where the skin actually like peels off. And there's like, why would you risk that? Like, our generation had the chicken pox. So we are not scared for our kids to get the chicken pox. That does not bother us. We're like, you have a rash, you're a little itchy, you have a fever, no big deal. That's the same thing as the measles. Like, an older generation isn't scared of the measles because they had it. And they're like, why are y'all scared of this? But the younger generation that's like early 20s, they are not familiar with either. And they're terrified because they don't realize it's literally just a rash and a fever, maybe a cough. And as long as you're generally healthy, this is not concerning. You know what I mean? And so I think that's where a lot of it is that Candace Owens even says, did we ever get rid of the measles? Did they just start calling it chicken pox? Did now they just call it hand, foot, and mouth? Like, is it we know bacteria and viruses can pleomorph. We know when you give an antibiotic a lot, the bacteria becomes antibiotic resistant. It pleomorphs into a different form, and viruses can do that too. And so that's what she's saying. Like, is it actually just kind of becoming something a little bit different, and then we're just slapping a new name on it? Are we actually doing anything with these vaccinations besides causing chronic disease? And that's a really good thought, is like, are we making any progress here? My thought is no, we're going backwards very quickly. As an industrialized nation, our infant death rate is 50% higher. 50% higher than any others. And it's because, like I said, they're vaccinating these kids, and within 24 hours, 48 hours, maybe they're dying of SIDS. And so, and they're becoming chronically ill. They're getting like vaccines literally immediately when they come out. There are very few babies that have a risk of getting hepatitis B right when they're born.
I know. Right. Like, I don't understand that.
That's the whole thing. So that was another one that they put all this money into a campaign, and they were really pushing it on like homosexuals, but of course they weren't concerned. They didn't want to take it. So they're like, okay, we created it for these people, and these people aren't really using it. We have all these vaccinations. What are we going to do? Let's just give them to the newborns. We got to fit it.
But like, what was their rationality behind that one? I mean, I just can't even, like, why did we even, I wish I could redo my babies, because my babies are vaccinated. We've stopped, one at 2 and one at 5, but it's just like,
yeah.
I always separated though, because even from an uneducated standpoint, I always felt very uncomfortable at those appointments, but I didn't feel educated enough to stop. So I started separating them, and then I just stopped. I'm like, until I research more, I'm not doing this any longer. But you know what? I've had good experiences where they're like, okay, no problem.
Yeah. Well, and I always say, like, the parents that are saying that MMR caused my kid to have this, like, they're not gaining anything. Like, what is the benefit?
Right.
Like, why would they say that if it wasn't true? And they're showing videos that, like, that's why it's so important for these people to watch those documentaries. These parents are like, look at this home video of my child walking, talking, full sentences. Then they're screaming with a fever, banging their head on the crib. They go back to the doctor and they're like, oh, no correlation. This is, your kid is just autistic. Well, my kid wasn't autistic 2 weeks ago.
Right.
No, my kid was perfectly fine. They're not diagnosing it earlier. They're causing it.
I think that's a super powerful point to bring up. And I think we need to do some deeper talks on vaccines of all the things. But, it's like when I started questioning vaccines, it was after Anya, who's now almost 9, she was injured at her 2-month appointment and again at her 4-month appointment because I wasn't quite strong enough to say no yet. And when I started questioning them, my sister, who's a nurse, started questioning vaccines also. And she went into the hospital where she worked to ask the questions. And I went to moms who had kids who were injured to ask the questions. She decided vaccines are safe and I'm still going to vaccinate my kids. I decided vaccines are questionable. I don't feel like they're safe. I don't know if I'm making the right decision, but I know that something is telling me not to move forward, and we stopped. And so I feel like that fear is what people play on. And then the point that you made, we don't gain anything from sharing these stories and talking about vaccines. You know what I've gained over the last decade talking about them?
Bunch of hate.
I've gained a bunch of hate. People in my inbox telling me I should die. My kids should be taken away from me.
You're a murderer.
I'm killing innocent kids. Some girl last night, we're going to do a podcast on this. Some girl last night was blowing me up for like 20 minutes about, the thing she was saying was vile.
Ridiculous.
Like, she hopes men do something to me in front of my children.
God.
I've
had literal death threats sent to me.
Oh, it's crazy. So we're not doing this out here like that. We're not gaining anything. Friends and family have blocked me. My aunt,
crazy.
My godmother wouldn't hug me at my grandma's funeral because I didn't have a mask on and I'm not vaccinated for COVID. Like, we are not out here gaining anything. We are sharing our stories through so much hate and negativity. And so that, for me, when I went down that rabbit hole, was, why would these moms be lying? Why would these moms be sharing these stories for no other reason than to help other moms? And so I think that that's really important. And going back to the measles, I feel like the moms, the OG mamas that have been on this path for quite some time, and we're very strong in our decision. Like through COVID, I told Mike, like, unless people are like turning into zombies in the street or like bleeding out of every orifice, like I am not gonna even think about a vaccine, a mask, nothing like that. Like I'd have to see someone like bite someone and turn into a zombie, and then I'd be like, okay, maybe. But those moms like us, like you're not changing our minds. We have made our decision. We are confident. The problem and the reason that we're doing this episode of this podcast and many others that we will do is that mom that's new to this journey, that mom that maybe in the last, year or even 2 years has, or maybe the last 6 months, they've decided, hey, something doesn't feel right about vaccines. I'm going to stop. Oh my God, there's a measles outbreak. My kid is going to die if I don't get him vaccinated. What do I do?
Yeah.
And so,
like you just said, nurses, like you mentioned nurses, so many, like we live in a really small town. And so we have a local hospital here, of course, not very big. There's like maybe 4,000 or 5,000 people in this whole town. The majority of the nurses out there, and I don't say the majority, a lot of them have stopped vaccinating. So when you are looking at people that are in the medical community, seeing this firsthand, are not vaccinating their children, I think you need to listen. It's time to wake up. It's time.
Yes.
I've heard from nurses who work in clinics where they give vaccines, and of course they can't say anything. They can't tell these people, I don't vaccinate my kids, but they're trying to provide them more information and like plant that, idea that maybe you don't have to do this, and they're getting scrutinized as well. And so it's crazy. One of the doctors that I talked to at a clinic here, actually, she didn't fully vaccinate her kids. She did vaccinate them. She did them one at a time. She skipped the MMR and the DTaP, and she spaced the rest of them out. It's proof that there is some validity to what people are saying if doctors and nurses are backing away from this. And we have the most chronically ill nation, and we have the most vaccines of any other nation. And so the way I kind of like to explain is like, okay, when you give our white blood cells and our like antibodies and all of this, we have this massive immune system. And so it's like we have all these soldiers ready to fight. And if I give a vaccine, all of them band together to fight this one thing, and it opens me up susceptible to everything else. And so these kids are catching everything under the sun because they're not vaccinated for that thing. So all their antibodies are just over here working on
that.
That
is such a great way to put it. I love it.
And you know what's so
crazy?
What's so crazy about that is the example I gave you of my sister. She vaccinated her kids. She thinks I'm crazy about the food and how we live. She just thinks I'm insane. But guess what? Guess whose kids are always sick, whose kids are always on antibiotics, who have tubes in their ears, all the things, and whose kid is not. Now, obviously, there's exceptions, April and Mold, and I know April's, her little one has had some issues and been sick. And
he's vaccinated.
Well, that's true. You recently stopped, so that's that. There we go.
He got vaccinated till. You told me. I was sick myself, and I had to see what I had to see firsthand to go, wait a minute. I was going to hospitals, I was going to doctors, and they were telling me,
that's how everyone's journey starts.
You're fine, take a pill. And when I saw it firsthand, I'd already felt uncomfortable with the vaccines. I'd already started spacing them out, right? So I was already on my way. But I was thinking the opposite. I was like, okay, my son is always getting sick. I can't not give him these. What if it's my fault? But in reality, I believe he's MTHFR, and I believe that they were causing more issues than good. And so I actually had a really great experience recently with an immunologist. I'm not going to mention names because she'd already stepped down from her position at a very large hospital system in our nation because of her views on COVID. She didn't agree. And she was telling me about his immune system is functioning. His immune system is doing what it's supposed to do. Do not freak out. And that I was making the right choice. This is an immunologist. It is her job to vaccinate me. And she told us I was making the right choice. So he is vaccinated up until I think his 2-year-old visit. I don't think he got the booster. I think the boosters are what's coming up next, and I'm skipping them.
Yeah.
And I will say he was not a very sick baby, but he's been a sick toddler. And vaccines we're right in that time frame. So yes, mold. I definitely think mold's a problem. I mean, there's a lot of things, but I could see it. I see it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
And that's
What's
why
crazy is like you can talk about my kid's allergic to peanuts. Don't give them peanuts. But if you say like my kid reacts to vaccines, people are like, that's insane. You're crazy. And I'm like, but your kid can't have peanuts, but I can't inject my kid with formaldehyde because they're going to have a reaction. Like it doesn't there's no common sense going into this conversation at all. Like
we're extremely programmed.
Yeah. Like even things that are good for you, like, like broccoli, like some people cannot eat that. They literally have a food allergy to that food. People can have allergens, especially to chemicals that are bad for us anyways. And so, and another thing is I always tell people, like, if you took what was in a vaccination and put it in a spoon and gave it to your kid, you would go to jail. You would go to jail. If that does not tell you how dangerous it is, that they can't eat it, but you can inject it, there's a problem with the way that your brain is working. And I do not mean that to be hateful. No. And I always use the word ignorance. And I always like to explain ignorance means lack of knowledge. Right. It does not mean stupidity. It means you do not have knowledge in that area. And most of these doctors are very ignorant when it comes to vaccines and how they work. When you ask them if they'll test your child for MTHFR mutation before they vaccinate, most of them do not even know what that is.
They don't. They don't.
That is the problem. I'm like, my kid can't methylate, so they can't detox these chemicals in their body. But you don't even know what that mutation is, but you're telling me vaccines are safe. How can you tell me they're safe when you're not familiar with what a genetic mutation that 40% of the population has that puts them at higher risk for autism and vaccine injury?
Yeah, we just had an interview.
April and I were just talking about this because we actually are going to be part of a documentary with a pretty major news station on Crunchy Moms. And so we were explaining MTHFR and how they do heel pricks on your newborn baby and why are we not including MTHFR in the heel prick or doing a cheek swab? But guys, we have about 10 minutes before we have to get on our next call. So, and I think after being part of this today, we have to do a fever talk. We need to do vaccine ingredients. We need to do vaccine inserts, how to read it. Like this is, we
yes, absolutely. Let's get back on track. So what would you tell a mom whose maybe kid gets measles, right?
Or let's start with how to build immunity. If you're out there and you're new to this world and you're not questioning your decision, but you're concerned, what would you do to protect your child from the measles without going and getting a vaccine?
Perfect. Yep.
So we want to keep their immune system up. The best way to do that is to avoid vaccinations. Or if they have been vaccinated, you want to detox. So the PBX spray is one of the main things I recommend for vaccine detox to get heavy metals out. Test them for MTHFR. We have a cheek swab. It's $100. You swab their cheek, mail it in, tell if they have MTHFR mutation. And then I would if it's someone that's really concerned, and I'll be honest, like I'm not even doing this with my kids because they take regular vitamins, they say detox. But if you're worried, we have a homeopathic, it's actually called VacCord. It's actually originated to help with vaccine reactions. And so it's another thing, if your kid does have vaccine reactions, even if it happened a long time ago and they're still having issues, you can use VacCord to help detox along with PBX spray. But it actually has a no-sode in there for pertussis and for the measles. And what a no-sode is it's, like we said, a frequency of a disease tissue that you give to the body to help build immunity. And this is homeopathy was the main form of medicine before the Rockefellers got involved, which is a whole another talk that we can do on the Rockefellers and why I don't trust Big Pharma at all. But the VacCord is great. You can just give it, literally it's a dropper bottle and it will last forever because you can give like 2 to 3 drops in a water bottle. If your kids have a little water bottle they drink through the day, put 2 or 3 drops in there, they can't even taste it. And every time they take a drink, it's going to stimulate their immune system just a little bit to build antibodies to that. Vitamin A, Dr. Tenpenny talks about this, high doses of vitamin A if they do get sick, but also boosting their immune system. We have one that's called ACX that has vitamin A, vitamin C, echinacea. It also has thymus and spleen factors. So if your kid is sick all the time, this is a great one to put them on to help actually rebuild the thymus and the spleen, which are two major immune system organs. And then, of course, vitamin D. So we actually have an immunity bundle that has the VAC cord, the CX, ACX, and some liquid vitamin D, all in liquid form to give to littles if you're concerned. And it's also, like I said, a kit to have on hand. If your kid does get it, you can use those things as well. But detoxing, vitamin D, like the vitamin D and the ACX, you could do even just to boost immunity in general. But yeah, that's the route that I would go.
And then if your child so this is to build immunity. Maybe they were around someone who had measles. If your child did have measles, you would do the same protocol, just maybe up it a little.
Yeah, so I would increase it's called CX, ACX, because it's a concentrate. It's a little bitty bottle, and they just take a couple drops. I would increase that dose. I would increase vitamin D, very high doses of those two. And then, like we talked about, we have a homeopathic fever kit. So the thing with homeopathy is you want to match the symptoms or the remedy to the symptoms. And so we have a kit that has 8 different homeopathic remedies for fever. And it comes with a little paper that tells you with this type of fever, this is the one you use. It's very easy, very self-explanatory. And so I would just manage symptoms with homeopathy for the fever, calcium lactate if they're prone to, seizures, or even if they're not, calcium lactate's great. Nebulizer for the cough. We have, we do colloidal silver in the nebulizer. We do the hydrogen peroxide diluted down in the nebulizer as well to just control the cough. And it's really just symptom management. I mean, like I said, a lot of people our age had chickenpox. And so you don't do anything for that. You do, natural immune boosting things.
But I love that you put them in kits, because what you just said could sound like a foreign language to someone new to this world. So putting them in kits and having those instructions and this resource for them to go back to is huge, because I'm not new. I'm a couple of years in, but I'm still new to that world, even though I went to naturopathic practitioner to get a certification to understand it better, because I was so lost in the beginning, right? You don't know who to ask. You don't know who to talk to, because your mom group's going to judge you, or someone at school and the doctors are going to yell at you. You don't know what to do. So what you just had, and having that is amazing for people to come back to on that.
Yeah, and I can get y'all the link to our lab store as well if anybody wants the MTHFR test. It's the easiest one as far as just sending in a saliva sample. We have a full methylation panel too. I like to do on adults that are think that they have it, because it also checks for a lot of other genetic SNPs like COMT, which is another big one that's coming up. MTRR. Yeah. So those are some really good options. So all of those are on there. So I'll get y'all.
Yeah, we can link that in the show notes along with our community link, so that you guys could see where we keep all the resources for the measles and the vaccines and all that stuff that they could find, and the documentaries and all that will be into that link as well. So we'll just put that in the show notes.
We have a coupon code for Lakrista's e-store that will get you a discount. And then I think if you watch this before we get everything squared away, because we are very new to this, just message Lakrista if you want to work with her, Crunchy Moms Unfiltered. And, she will do some special stuff just for, the viewers of our show. So absolutely. Lakrista, you're amazing. I love you. We'll be in your text as soon as we get off here, scheduling the next 8 podcasts.
So knowledgeable. Thank you. Yeah, you're like a plethora of knowledge. I love it. And it's very helpful for people who are looking for resources. And she will, if you are in our community and you happen to be here, she'll be one of our trusted providers in there as well. So we'll make sure you get all the things in the show notes to be able to contact all the things.
Awesome. This was fun.
Yay.
Thanks,
all right,
ladies.
guys. We are going to be doing weekly drops for this podcast. We are the Crunchy Moms Unfiltered, where we can talk about all the things uncensored, because you know how censorship be, and come to the table. We listen and we don't judge. And we'll catch you next time.
Bye.